Hello everyone, thank you very much for joining us for another story here at Annie Narrates. The title for this one goes like this. Mom refuses to let me into her house after I lose my job and become homeless because she's too broke to help me. But just 2 weeks later, I see her buy a house for my cousin. So I reached out to my aunt to know more about it, and boy oh boy, I did not expect to discover this. This is going to be kind of long, so apologies for that in advance. I may also ramble a bit because it's super late here and I'm not in the best headspace. Anyway, so I, 23 female, lost my job 2 weeks ago. I was lucky enough to be given a 2-week notice since I was good friends with my manager. I rented a place in my city, but had to let my landlord know that I would be moving out since I wouldn't be able to afford another month of rent. I'm fresh out of uni, so along with paying off student loans and trying to rent an expensive place in an expensive city, means my savings are practically at nothing. Knowing I was super close to being homeless, I called my mom up on my last day at my old company and asked if I could crash with her just until I found a new job. Now, just for some context, my mother is 60 female and I do not have the best relationship. My father, 60 male, had an affair with a close friend of my family, and he left us when I was around 12. I was devastated then because I didn't understand how he could up and leave his family like that. He never made an effort to see me except for a few court-mandated visits up until I was 18, after which I get maybe a text on my birthday every year of that. He paid child support and alimony until I was a legal adult too, but that's about it. We were never particularly wealthy, so things like therapy were out of the question. I got into a pretty good uni thanks to studying all the time in high school, but I only got a partial scholarship. I was also hired at a good company in my city immediately after graduating, and things were finally looking up until all this happened. Got a little off topic, but my point is that ever since my dad left, mom was never really the same again. I'm sure the affair hit her hard. They were high school sweethearts, and I could tell she probably spiraled after he left. However, I never really understood why she started distancing herself from me from then onwards. She used to be sweet and caring, always checking up on me, always doing things with me, like going out for coffee dates or shopping, reading to me before bed. That all just suddenly stopped. As I grew older, I figured she was probably just depressed and never recovered from my dad's betrayal. She walked in on him in bed with a woman 20 years younger than them. I was also a teenager by the time things were finalized, and I learned how to take care of myself. Mom had started snapping at me over small things, saying cruel things like, "You're just like your father," or "I don't want to look at your face right now," or "I can't wait till you're off to college." I'll admit I wasn't the easiest teen, but I don't think any parent should be speaking to their child like that. I truly believed our relationship was getting better over recent years though. Once I went off to college, she seemed a lot lighter and happier every time we met over holidays or whatever. She was also in general nicer to me, and so I really didn't understand what was going on. When I asked her if I could move back home for a bit, she said no. Just straight up no, with no explanation. I was desperate and scared, so I pushed a bit, asking why, after which she snapped at me, saying now that I'm an adult, I have to take care of myself. And she doesn't make enough to look after me anymore, especially since the child support payments stopped rolling in. I was sort of taken aback by this outburst considering I hadn't been spoken to this way in a few years now. But then again, this was my mom we were talking about. I told her it would not be for long, that I would be out as soon as I found a job, and would even pay her back as soon as I could. She did not want to hear it though, saying she's not going to quote-unquote let me into her house to freeload when she's broke herself. I was hurt, beyond hurt. Haven't been spoken to this way since high school. I let it go and tried figuring out other plans and things I could do to avoid being homeless. So currently, I'm crashing at a friend's house. I had to live in my beat up old second-hand Toyota for a couple of days, but it beat being on the streets, so I'm grateful for that car. My friend is someone I've known since middle school, and we are very close. I have been applying to jobs non-stop, and have even gotten callbacks and interviews for a few. So I imagine this arrangement isn't going to have to go on for a lot longer. Sorry, off topic again. So it's been about 3 weeks in total since I lost my job. Like I said, I spoke to my mom the day I was let go, and eventually had to take her words at face value. She was too broke to house me. Imagine my surprise when I saw my cousin, I'll call her Leah, 22 female, with an Instagram post of a new house, with a caption thanking my mom for helping her buy her dream starter home. I was so surprised that at first, the whole thing didn't really even register in my brain. I was just kind of confused and showed my lovely friend who I'm staying with. She looked shocked as well, since I had told her the whole story when I had moved in. I was sort of pissed at my mom too, so I definitely didn't want to call her to ask what was going on. After sleeping on it for a couple of nights, I decided to ask my aunt what was up a few days ago. My aunt, I'll call her Bia, 54 female, is my mom's younger sister. Bia has always been sweet to me and was at our house pretty often to help out with stuff after the divorce. I knew she was most likely to be upfront about what was going on. I told her I saw Leah's post on Instagram and wanted to congratulate her. I also asked her how this happened and what the occasion was. Bia thanked me for my well wishes and then told me that Leah had just graduated with honors from her uni, and my mother had promised to help her get her own house if she was able to graduate with honors. I'll admit that really stung. Bia did ask me what was going on in my life, but I wasn't in the mood to get into that. I just told her things were going okay and to let Leah know that I was happy for her. It had been 2 days since I spoke to Bia, and the whole thing was really weighing on me. I was happy for Leah, of course, but part of me was so jealous, and I felt and still feel terrible about that. I should be happy for my cousin. She and I were close when we were younger, and she's a sweet person and doesn't have anything to do with my mom's behavior with me. I talked to my friend Sam, 23 female, who I'm living with right now, and she told me to go talk to Bia about it. I finally cracked and called Bia up a couple of days ago, asking to catch up and to know if we could meet up for a quick cup of coffee. She agreed and seemed sort of concerned, since this isn't something we did a lot, or ever honestly. Anyway, we met up yesterday at a local coffee shop. We started with small talk, mostly me asking Bia about Leah, her degree, and how Bia was doing since she's been out of the house. Bia told me that she missed her daughter, but was super happy that she got to buy a house so young, all thanks to my mother. She must have noticed the expression on my face. I'm sure I looked like I was going to break down crying, and immediately asked what was up. I then proceeded to spew some major word vomit. I started out by telling her how I got let go, how much debt I was in, and how I was practically homeless and crashing at a friend's place while looking for a new job. I also told her how my mom turned me away when I asked to move back in with her for a bit because she said she was too broke. So to see Leah's post was like a huge slap in the face to me. Bia looked stunned for a bit, and we just sat in silence for a couple of minutes. Eventually, she apologized to me for everything I had been going through and asked me how long things had been like this with my mom. I started crying at some point and explained to her how things had been since Dad left, pretty much the way I had explained it here. She looked genuinely heartbroken for me, and that's when the truth dropped. Apparently, she had known my mom had withdrawn a bit after the divorce, but had never realized how bad it had truly been for me, since mom would never behave that way in front of other people, of course. Apparently, mom had been recently promoted at her job and was doing very well for herself. We had also been getting way more child support than I had been told. My dad was very rich, and she just had put it into an account for herself. Bia knew my dad was well off, so as my mom, where she seemed to always be scraping by. My grandparents on my dad's side had also been sending a lot of money to look after me to my mom, but this was the first I had heard about any of it. She told Bia she was putting all the money she could into my college fund so that I could go to college debt-free. Bia then confronted her about her behavior with me, since she could see I was sort of being ignored and neglected. And mom would always tell her she just needed time to heal, and that I looked so much like my dad. She was starting to resent me too. Hearing this stung me so much. I knew I reminded mom of the husband who left her, but to hear the words was like a salt in the wound. I told Bia that I never received a single penny for college. Everything had been paid for by my partial scholarship and the crippling student loans I took up to cover for the rest. This was when Bia dropped the second bomb. She told me Leah was biologically my mother's daughter. Bia wasn't married, but I had always assumed Leah's dad was just never in the picture. As it turns out, my mom had had an affair when I was a baby, and this resulted in Leah being born. My dad was obviously heartbroken at this, and it seemed to be where their issues started. He refused to take care of another man's baby, so my mom asked Bia to adopt her. Bia was unable to have children on her own due to some health issues, so she agreed to give this little girl a good home. It's almost funny how a simple outing for coffee turned into some sort of surreal soap opera. My dad had fallen out of love with my mom and had eventually met someone new and moved left. I'm not excusing his actions. he left his young daughter behind as well. But for my mother to act like the victim this whole time when all of this was her fault to begin with, and then to blame me, something in me snapped. I started crying and couldn't even get a single word out. Bia, on the other hand, was absolutely fuming for me, and we came up with a plan to see what exactly my mother had done with that money she had supposedly been saving. She called Mom and put her on speaker, pretending to act normally. She made some small talk at first to seem natural, then thanked her again for helping Leah out with the house. She asked me where she got so much money from. Bia had never asked her that before since my mom had always been sending money for Leah since she was her daughter. My mom simply said that she had been using my college fund for it. Bia's jaw dropped, even though we knew in our hearts this was where it was going. When she asked why, Mom said I didn't need the money since I had gotten a full ride scholarship. Untrue. And Leah had always been so close with my mom anyway that she wanted to help out in some way. She also said she wanted a chance to do something for the daughter she actually relates with the most, and that I was too much like my father for her to ever be close to me. This was the point where I spoke up. I told Mom she knew that was a lie, and she seemed shocked to realize I had been listening in the whole time. She started yelling at me and Bia for quote-unquote setting her up and quote-unquote making her look like a bad mother. I told her she was a bad mother, that she had neglected me for my whole life, punishing me for things that weren't my fault, and then taking money from my dad's side of the family that belonged to me to spend on herself and Leah. I also told her there was a reason Dad had left her, because she was a terrible person and he could see it. Their marriage and every problem that came afterward was her fault, and I never wanted to speak to her again. Since then, I've blocked my mom everywhere. I am absolutely sure that I want to go completely no contact with her, but for some reason, I have this pit in my stomach telling me that I'm a terrible person for how I spoke to her. I also feel horrible for how jealous of Leah I am and how angry I am with her, even though none of this is her fault, and she doesn't even know anything about it. I am sorry if this has been all over the place, but I just don't know what to do or where to go from here. I really want to know if I took things too far, and if there's anything I can do to make things better for myself. Should I confront my mom or Leah? Can I sue for the child support money? So it's been a few days since I posted, and I have definitely calmed down since then. I spoke to Sam about this whole thing, and she's been more than supportive. She's practically my backbone through this whole thing, and I am beyond grateful. It helped me sort out my emotions, and I think I can make better decisions going forward. I did some research, and I don't think I can sue my mom for any of the child support payments she received since I am an adult now. However, I do plan on reaching out to my paternal grandparents to clear some stuff up. As for Leah, I definitely don't plan on telling her any of this anytime soon. Thanks to everyone here who left kind comments and messages. I know jealousy is a normal emotion, but I find it to be a gross one that I don't enjoy feeling. I am also happy to announce I got a job offer from one of the places I applied to a month ago, and I'm probably going to take it. Not sure if I plan on updating here again, but yeah. Okay, so it's been about 2 weeks since I last posted. My original post blew up way more than I expected, and I don't have notifications on, so when I did remember to log back on here, I was absolutely bombarded with new comments and private messages. I have to say I am very grateful to anyone who commented or messaged. There are so many here that I haven't been able to reply to everyone just yet, but I have read the most. I'm going to clear some stuff up first. For the person that commented calling me a freeloader for staying with my friend rent-free, way to focus on the wrong thing. I take care of everything I can at home. Cooking, laundry, dishes, you name it. Sam jokes that she should just let me stay here forever so I can do her housework for her. Jokes aside, I have accepted an offer from a company, and I'll be paying her back for half the rent and groceries for the month as soon as I can. I'm not just bumming it out on her couch though, we're also very good friends. So while we're super close and don't hold things like these against each other, I definitely don't take her kindness for granted though. My Aunt Bia is an absolute sweetheart, but she isn't super confrontational. I have kept in touch with her since the coffee date we had, and she has been giving me updates on my mom, which I'll get into in a second. Leah and I didn't know about her adoption, but since my last update, Bia has decided to tell her. She has also given her a brief update on how things were going with me, plus a rundown of everything that happened over coffee. Leah reached out to me after my last update to apologize and tell me she had no idea about anything. I felt terrible for how I had felt about her and told her none of this was her fault either. I'm sure she's upset about this being kept from her for so long. As for her relationship with my mom, I don't know. I know she's upset with Bia though, and wants space from her, which Bia understands. I also reached out to my grandparents after my first update after reading some comments here, and we have video called twice since then. For those asking why this didn't come up sooner, my dad was never too close with his parents either, so I grew up quite distant from them. They also live a 5-hour plane ride away, so safe to say we never saw each other much. I did explain absolutely everything that went down in my life, starting from my parents' divorce. They were not happy with my mom, of course, and are looking into ways they can take legal action against her for keeping money that wasn't meant for her. I think they had come to some sort of agreement when it came to financial help from my grandparents, and there was some sort of vague written agreement. Think emails detailing payments made, and confirmation from my mother that she would use the money for me, almost like informal child support. I guess you can't do anything if you have enough money and the right lawyer, which my grandparents do. They are very wealthy, so yeah. They also offered to pay off my student loans, but I don't know about that. I told them I would feel guilty for having them do that, to which they replied there was no reason to feel that way. I told them that I would get back to them about it, but in the meantime, I have decided to work on my relationship with them. It feels good to sort of have people in my corner now, and I don't want to jinx it, but things are looking up. Thank you to everyone who replied here and was concerned about me. Hi guys, it has been almost 2 months since I last updated here, and I basically forgot to update again since so much has been happening. First things first, I am back on my feet finally. I mentioned last time that I accepted an offer, and I'm happy to say that I got a fantastic offer and was able to move into a new, tiny apartment. I have also been slowly paying Sam back, even though she has insisted that I don't need to. Leah and Bia are doing better too. We started meeting pretty often, and Bia and I ended up explaining absolutely everything to Leah from the very beginning. She has started therapy to help her work through the emotions all of this has brought up for her, but I have assured her that she should keep the house she was given. She was feeling guilty about it, but she's a sweetheart, and I don't want her to feel guilty when she has an advantage she deserves. Now on to some more interesting and dramatic updates. My grandparents and I have been keeping in touch. They're sweet people, even if they are kind of reserved and quiet. I agreed to let them help out with my loans partially, and I'll be super honest, it's very relieving. About a month ago, my grandparents did end up taking legal action against my mother for basically siphoning all the money for something it wasn't meant for. I guess she didn't think it would be a problem since there was no formal contract, but since there was a written agreement and my mom had acknowledged the agreement, they definitely could take legal action. Their lawyer is also an absolute shark, so I'm sure he's going to have a field day with this. When my mom was contacted about this whole situation, she absolutely blew up. She started emailing me and texting me from a new number, saying I had no right to come after her for all this since she put a roof over my head and food on my plate. I honestly don't know why that's something she's so proud of, considering that was like her only job as a parent. She said a lot of things, but I'm not going to go too much into detail about that. She called me a bunch of names that aren't great to say to your own daughter and told me that I'm a horrible person and that she will never forgive me for this. I have been super checked out from our relationship anyway, so while this didn't exactly cut me very deep, I did avoid blocking her and kept a record of all the stuff she said to me, since it could be used in my grandparents' case. Apart from that, I also decided to start therapy. I know it's been a long time coming, but so many people here suggested it, and I decided to finally give it a shot. I've only had like 2 sessions so far, so I don't see much of a difference yet. I have enjoyed just venting my feelings in detail for an hour to someone who has to listen to me, and my therapist is really sweet too. So I think I will be continuing. So yeah, that's what's been going on in my life for everyone who has been asking me. Thank you again to the people who reached out with advice and support through this woo crazy mess. I think I'm in a much better place now than I was when I first posted, and I really appreciate the community that seems to have formed here. I don't think I'll be updating again, unless something really big happens. That was it for today's story. Thank you very much for listening. Smash that like button for me and subscribe for more stories. Thanks again, and we'll be seeing you in the next one.